Hey guys, it's Drake with the RPG Construct. Just wanted to do a brief video, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, just kind of explaining my thought process when I reskinned the Oath of the Frozen King, the new or upcoming Absolute Tabletop Adventure Kit. That I ran a game where three guys and a girl, ran this adventure kit, but I took a lot of artistic license. I think I stayed true to the foundation of what they wanted, but I wanted to see how easy it would be to reskin it. And for somebody who doesn't usually prep, which is, I usually prep 15 minutes or so before games, maybe 30. I think about it a lot, but I never write it down. It took me about 30 to 45 minutes to reskin this. So the first thing that I wanted to do is I rolled, one of these random setting dice that I have, and the setting that I got was actually the Feywilds, and I was like, okay, well, that's a little bit different than a frozen tundra, but we'll see what we can do with it. And then I rolled another random die for what type of a creature would be the antagonist, and I got undead. So my mind immediately went to Lich, because what is the kind of the antithesis of the Feywilds? This lush green, full of life, fairy area, versus this undead creature, hellbent on destruction. And as I went through, there's a bunch of background about the Frozen King, ruling and, leading his people to ruin, and then he was eventually ousted and he was put to death. But before he was put to death, he said, this land is mine now, it's going to be mine again. Basically kind of this, scary, foreboding quote to indicate that he's going to try to come back. So I reskinned that a little bit, that there was an elven sorcerer who sought, in the Feywilds, who sought the basically the forbidden gift of lichdom, and he got it. But in that transformation, he started to become jealous of the living and developed that typical hatred for anything living. And so he cast a blight upon the Feywilds, and destroyed plant, creature, elves, tens of thousands, of things died. And it basically consumed part of the Fey, and the scar from that still exists. I called it the Blighted Lands, places in the Fey where the blight reached, but even centuries later, it still won't, nothing will grow there. No trees, everything's withered or dead, like boggy and just gross. So then I started using some of the random tables. And also with that, I came up with, kind of a quote, that, this was my home when in life, it will be my home in death, all will wither, all will bow. Again, just kind of coming up with a foreboding thing. So the first thing was the conflict, what's going to happen. And with that, I kind of thought that instead of this icy prison, that the magic of the fairy or the elves imprisoned this creature somehow. It took the combined force of a bunch of people to do it, and eventually those people sacrificed themselves to imprison the Lich. But I thought it would kind of be cool if instead of like an icy, frozen thing, that it could have been more magical. And I thought of like a magical gem, because the Lich's soul would be trapped. Not so much the Lich itself, because it's just a vessel, but like Liches do, if the body gets killed, in 1 to 10 days they come back. So I thought, imprison the soul in like a gem, and have some type of a place, a prison that everyone knew. In the Feywilds, this is what happened here. Just like everyone knew in the Frozen King that this is the place where he's entombed. And there are guards posted out front to make sure nobody goes in there. And when I went to the conflicts, there's a roll table there, or a choice of, I think, 4. And when I rolled a 1, which was basically a cannibalistic cult breaks into this tomb and tries to revive him with a ritual. And the cannibalistic cult thing I kind of really liked, so I reskinned that to goblins, but goblins reskinned for the Feywild. So I called them bark goblins. So think like regular green goblins, but their skin is more tree-like, it's more bark-like, higher AC, more nature. But I did have them having overrun some of the Fey guards that guarded this place. I did have them roasting their appendages at some point. So cannibalistic in that they eat elves, but I thought that was kind of a fun spin on it. And then what was the other part? Give me just one second here. The quests. There's a D12 roll table, and I got number 6, which is escort a lord or a politician. And I thought maybe the Lord of the Fae has a family member that needs to strengthen this, this prison. Something's going on with this prison, and I thought the blight that perhaps it started coming back. Perhaps the grove that this twisted oak lived in, perhaps that tree is dying now, and as it dies, the surrounding area is getting more and more withered and barren, indicating that the lich may be coming back or something like that. Either way, it would be a concern. So we have to get this princess there in order to imprison him again. Did a little bit more with the backstory, and just said that her brother was one of the members of that Elder Fae Council from before, and that he sacrificed himself. She knows the spell. Maybe she can do the same thing, or she can at least bolster the prison. And then I went to the motivation section. And the motivation section, I believe I rolled a number, let me see where it was. It was a 15, which was acting to restore their honor. I tweaked that one a little bit, and I said that one, these guys all had a debt to the Lord of the Fae, and they were all called because they were not of the Feywilds. They've tried to send their own people, and they haven't been successful. So I kind of, the kind of calling in a debt. There's some, things about different places in there. There's a map in here. I used that a little bit, but kind of the twisting and turning map that they had in the tomb of the Giant King, or the Frozen King. I decided that there was going to be, in that same manner of twisting and turning, that throughout the centuries, kind of a labyrinth of brambles and thorns had grown up around this tree, around this area, that it's really the only way to get to this tree. It's to protect it, from good guys and bad guys. So you kind of have to go through. So it gives the party something to navigate before they just go from point A to point B. They kind of have to go a roundabout way. So like I said, we had the gem in the tree and everything. The adventure kit goes through the locations. Obviously, I reskinned all those. The encounters. The first encounter they had was basically that they basically ran into the cannibals there. Or at least that's the first one that I was going to use. And when I said that, I thought, small group of goblins split off the labyrinth into 1, 2, and 3. Maybe they run into a dozen of them. Maybe they run into 6 of them. I don't know. The players wound up running into 6 of them. They had a little bit of a combat. Obviously, not very dangerous for a level 6 party, but it was a good warm-up. It was good to kind of see how people were going to go with everything. We did have a very stealthy, tech-savvy monk. Carol Dunster played her, and she did a lot of sneaking and kind of scouting ahead, so had some pretty good rolls with it. So that first encounter was pretty simple. The next one they had was something called the Mad Troll, and in the adventure kit, that basically they find this this guard kind of hiding and kind of scared, and he was one of the guards that was supposed to be posted at the front, but he was no longer there. My party had 2 dead Fey guards at the front, and they were told that there was another one inside. Well, the party got to this guy, and he was freaking out and all scared and everything. And instead of a mad troll, I reskinned it to this kind of, I found this thing called a tree golem on Pinterest, and I just thought, that would really work to have kind of this hulking, tree roots and bark and everything. It had like 150 hit points, 160 hit points. It just did a lot of damage. The party actually took 6 or 7 rounds for them to beat it, but it had a bunch of cool little, rooting things, and had these 2 glowing red eyes, which eventually the party found out to be rubies, which were used later, which was pretty cool. And after that, that encounter, there's something in here. It was a trap called On Thin Ice, where they had to solve a riddle. And my party, I had this one area where they could see this tree that they were going to, and I had kind of a moat in front of it, just about a foot across, that was flowing with red blood. And the party kind of looked at it for a second, and then one of them decided just to jump over it. And they basically activated the trap. If they had thought about it a little bit, they could have bypassed it, or they could have, gotten rid of it, but they didn't. When she jumped through it, it just exploded, and any, armor or weapons that they touched, the armor was down by 1 AC. The weapons went down by one hit die. So if it's a 1d10 weapon, it's now a 1d8. So it's still the same premise as the trap that they had here, but I wasn't on Thin Ice. I'm sorry. Tax of the Frozen King was what it was. And so it's just something to kind of make them remember that this is dangerous, and they really didn't have a lot of damage coming to them in the first part, but this is about to get serious. And so with the Frozen King encounter, I had this elven priestess or princess, go to the tree and literally take her dagger and take the gem out of the tree. And she was talking about how she couldn't fortify this gem. She had to release the lich and re-imprison it. And she thought she knew how to do that. And so in the adventure kit, it had this freezing aura. And obviously I can't do that with a lich, but the lich has a legendary ability. It's called Disrupt Life. And basically, everyone has to make a DC 18 Constitution save or take 66 necrotic damage. If they make it, then they only take half, but it's still a ton of damage. So I thought that would be the opening thing. As soon as this thing appeared, I had it, cast this. It never really got the chance to. It was only 3 or 4 rounds before the party really focused on, getting everything together. Taking little pieces, they put the magic of the warlock and the rubies that they took from the tree golem's eyes, and the spell that the princess actually forgot. And I had one of the players come up with just kind of a little incantation. Philip did a real good job with it. And they kind of put all this together, and it didn't work. And then she actually got hurt, and her hands were covered in blood. And with that, it was kind of the key ingredient in the spell. The blood of an elven royal was kind of the key to it. And when all that happened, the lich got, pulled back in. But she unfortunately sacrificed herself too, became part of this tree. And as everything went down, she got basically, absorbed into this tree, and she sacrifices herself as well. I threw a little bit of thing that her and Siegfried were a thing, and after this all happened, all that brown and withering type of stuff in the grove, everything started to come back, and flowers started opening, and blah blah blah. So it was actually a pretty decent game. Most of those guys I hadn't played with before, 3 of the 4, and it was really, really easy to take the ideas, saying something like, just to give you an idea, saying something like, oops, I apologize for the wait here. Oh, all right, where is it here? Yeah, saying something like, a cannibalistic cult breaks into the Frozen King's tomb and attempts to awaken him using an ancient ritual. Well, it's really not very hard to say, okay, a cult of of bark goblins break in, through the labyrinth, trying to awaken him using a ritual. You know, it's a really easy reskin. You're going to escort a lord or a politician. Okay. The motivation that they're basically trying to repay a debt is what I used. And the rest of this stuff, the maps, the location stuff, all of this were just kind of, if it says there was a prison, well, what? The prison can be anything. Hell, it doesn't even have to be something physical. It could be a prison of the mind. It was really easy to just go, okay, he's not frozen. He's trapped in a magic gem in a tree. Instead of a mad troll, I had a big old, rooty tree goblin. Instead of a soldier, I still had the same soldier, the same name, Siegfried. Instead of a trap that they have to solve a riddle and they get, blasted with this cold magic, they had to jump over a thing of blood, and it all, blew up and got blood all over them. And instead of a freezing aura, you have more of like a necrotic aura. So I'm using a lot of the same stuff that's there. And like I said, it only took me 30 or 45 minutes. It really was not difficult to do. And I think from what I've spoken to Tim about, they're looking to, find that sweet spot between complete supplement, A to B, B to C, C to D, and the people like me who really don't prep. And I would absolutely say that I could reskin this particular adventure kit into any setting, into any campaign that I've seen run or that I'm running. And one of my players last night, Jeff Dottie, was in Chris Wilhelm's initial one too, and Chris reskinned it as well. And Jeff said that if he had not known that it was a adventure kit playtest, that he would have never known that these came from the same thing. And that's, I think, the brilliance of all of this, that you can really use it for, for anything, for any setting. And we all get in that rut of, you're trying to come up with something cool, but you just need that little bit of inspiration, and you just run with it. And that is exactly what this adventure kit did for me. I'm actually thinking about running 2 or 3 more, just reskinning it to see how neat we can make it. Obviously, I wouldn't do a Lich again. I wouldn't do the Feywilds again. But it's a neat thing. If you haven't checked it out, it is on my channel, the RPG Construct. It's called the Blighted King of the Fey. Like I said, it was about a 3.5 hour game, and everyone really seemed to have a good time with it. I really enjoyed, coming up with some really cool ideas with not a whole lot of prep, but I really didn't have to because it was all there for me. But not so much was like a complete, like if you do Hoard of the Dragon Queen from Wizards of the Coast, every single thing is set. There was enough missing that I could use some artistic license and do that. So, but yeah, that's all I kind of wanted to do, guys. I know if you're going to run this, like I'm sure you've got to this point, it's all spoilers, but the thing is, there's so many roll tables, you could do it 100 different ways, and it could be a different story each time. So anyway, guys, again, this is Drake with the RPG Construct, and thank you for listening, and take care.